this goal required institutionalized force or violence, it was still an ethical one. Machiavelli provides an example of his concept while he was working for the Florentine state. The town of Pistoia was being ravaged by infighting. He proposed that Florence take it over to subdue it and bring order. But the public did not have a taste for such an enterprise and washed their hands of it. Left to his own devices, however, there was a bloodbath on the streets of Pistoia. Thus, Machiavelli argues, he who quells disorder by a very few signal examples will in the end be more merciful than he who from too great leniency permits things to take their own course, and so to result in rapine and bloodshed, for these hurt the whole state, whereas the severities of the prince injure individuals only. The fact is, any ruler, no matter how benign as a person, must face up to the state's use of violence to maintain its own existence. As a political actor, the refusal to do anything that does not seem good will only be your ruin. In his remark in chapter 6 of The Prince, that all armed prophets have been victorious and all unarmed prophets have been destroyed, Machiavelli is referring to the Savonarola, whose fatal mistake, he believed, was that he had no forceful means to see his vision, or Florence become real. Though a good man, by any measure, who tried to bring morality and republican ideals back to the city, in contrast to the ruthlessness Medici's, in the end, Savonarola was powerless to stop his own demise. Of the two ways of striving for mastery, Machiavelli noted, operating within the law was by far preferable to violence, which was the realm of beasts. Yet at the same time, a prince must be able to act both as a man and a beast, and he introduces the famous analogy of a ruler needing to be both a fox to discern snares and a lion to drive off wolves, while noting that it is human nature, when the sea is calm, not to think of storms. Machiavelli saw the wise leader as spending much of his time during peacetime, considering various scenarios of war, and working out how the kingdom will respond if the event actually happens. A prince may fool himself into believing that his energies should be spent on other things, but ultimately his role was to protect and preserve the state itself. To deviate slightly, I feel like this is the benefit of reading these types of books, such as The Prince by Machiavelli and The Art of War, because although the main interpretation lies directly with how one should be a great ruler, understanding things such as the concept of preparation for struggles or challenges, even whilst rejoicing in one's happiness, is a mindset not carried by a lot of people, but can help preserve one's happiness, and to understand that should one be faced with adversity, it's not abnormal but it's not just abnormal, it's going to help people in their lives. Back to the book. But do Machiavelli's thoughts on the use of force give carte blanche for rules to do anything for the sake of maintaining their power? Does might make right in his analysis of the does might make right? I think this refers to does the strength of one's leader make him correct in his statements? In his analysis of the occasions on which a ruler may justify violence, he is subversive and radical, openly admitting that such things may, by any unusual standard, be there's a distinction between violence that is committed for the reason of creating or preserving a good state, and wanton cruelty that is performed merely to preserve an individual ruler's power. He does not condemn, for example, Caesar Borgia's apparent cruelty in allowing one of his subordinates, Ramiro de Orco, to be brutally murdered, because it was a step Borgia had to take in order to establish his reign in a particular territory, which itself was a step towards his ultimate aim of unifying the Italian states to make them independent of foreign rule. On the other hand, Machiavelli gives low marks to the Roman emperors Commodus, Carsala, and Maximus, who made cruelty a way of life during their reigns. They became so hated that their premature deaths were inevitable. Therefore, he observes that not only is excessive cruelty bad, it is politically unwise. When it comes to seizing a principality or state, Machiavelli's general rule is that the usurper should be quick to inflict what injuries he must, at a stroke, that he may not have to renew them daily. This is, interestingly, just as Sun Tzu wrote in the ancient Chinese art, The Art of War. That is, if you are going to take or attack something, do it as quickly as possible and with maximum force, so that your foes give up early, and paradoxically, violence can be minimized. In doing so, you will be feared and can later be seen as magnanimous by your favours. In contrast, a half-hearted coup will allow your enemies to live on, and you will forever be fearful of being overthrown. The key with force is to be economical. Amid such justifications of violence, the modern reader may raise the example of Gandhi, whose moral authority alone forced the mighty British Empire to back down. For a study in power, the prince does not properly take account of such soft power or influence not backed by actual force. Yet Machiavelli was confining his analysis to actual states and their leaders. Gandhi never had to actually run a state, and to understand him you must appreciate the political context in which he was writing. The Italy of his time, he laments, has been overrun by Charles, plundered by Louis, wasted by Ferdinand, and insulted by the Swiss. A state of affairs which would have been prevented if its rulers had had strong national armies. Indeed, if he were to be born again in the 21st century, Machiavelli would perhaps not be surprised to learn that those states considered most powerful are also backed by the largest armies or firepower under the United States, China, Russia still. In his naked justification of force, Machiavelli realized it was sometimes necessary to go against religion. Yet as Machiavelli's scholar Maurizio Veroli rightly points out, Machiavelli never says to actually go against God. In fact, it can be right to go against the prevailing moral laws set down by the Church, because ultimately God is in favour of the laws and order that a strong state can bring, rather than power for the power's sake. Machiavelli's purpose is the establishment of a state that is robust enough to allow the private economy to flourish, that works according to laws and institutions, and that preserves culture. In this belief that God would want a strong and untied Italy, which was able to bring security to its people and their prosperity, with a flourishing national culture and identity, the Prince is, from its author's standpoint, a work with a clear moral foundation. Machiavelli's stance on power remains relevant to the leader of today. Each of us must take decisions which may not be welcomed by, or which may even hurt, those in our charge. Yet we act for the benefit and long-term well-being of the body that we administer, whether it be a business, some other organisation, or even a family. In this respect, the leader's role can be lonely and bring with it great responsibility. Such is the nature of power. Of the people, by the people. Though Machiavelli's view of human nature was dark, he also believed that a successful state could bring out the best in people, providing a stage on which individuals could find glory through a great act. As political philosopher Hannah Arendt noted, the prince is an extraordinary effort to restore the old dignity to politics, bringing back the classical Roman and Greek idea of glory to the 16th century Italy. In it, Machiavelli admires the self-made men who rise from humble private stations by their deeds, such as hero of Syracuse, risking all for public esteem and the chance of power. Yet how does this adulation of strong individual action fit with the republic ethos that runs through Machiavelli's other writings? Florentine histories, discourses, and in fact his lengthy experience working for a republic. As Viroli argues, the prince is largely a manual for founding a state, a great empire, which is inevitably the inspiration and work of a single person. Machiavelli discusses four ancient examples: Moses, Romulus, Theseus, and Cyrus, who almost single-handedly forged a new nation for their peoples. In his own time, he believed a similar heroic figure was needed to draw together the various kingdoms, duchies, and city-states of the Italian peninsula, founding a single powerful state, which in time might become a republic government by the rule of law. Once established, the ruler's power would then be properly checked and balanced by an array of democratic institutions. Machiavelli believed people were free agents, not easily swayed. Therefore, there was a qualitative difference between a tyrant who rules by force alone and a prince who rules by a combination of public support and fear. The conventional wisdom, he notes, is that he who builds on the people builds on mud. This was very much the view of the Medici, who, in their wars, preferred to pay for mercenaries than entrust their own population with weapons. Machiavelli went the other way, strongly advocating a national militia composed of a state's own citizens. The benefits of this were twofold. First, it would create a new sense of patriotism, united under the command of the new prince. And if war came, these soldiers would be strongly motivated to win, because they were fighting for their homes, families, and nations. Machiavelli was actually acutely sensitive of the delicate dance of power between the ruler, noble class, and people. In chapter 9, he states his wariness of a prince ever depending for his power on the nobility, since they will want many favours for installing you, or want to replace you altogether. The support of the people, on the other hand, may be more fickle and less able to be controlled, yet in difficult times it is worth much, providing a source of legitimacy. Indeed, in chapter 3 he notes, "For however strong you may be in respect of your army, it is essential that in entering a new province you should have the goodwill of its inhabitants." Later, he tackles the issue of how a prince can control a state that has previously lived under its own laws. One option is to destroy it utterly and bring in your own system. However, a city accustomed to live in freedom, if it be preserved at all, is more easily controlled through its own citizens than any other way. He notes that the people, no matter how long they are subverted, will not forget the freedoms they once enjoyed, or the laws and institutions that made them a proud state. have an abiding power that is not easily forgotten or extinguished. In summary, the ideal state